Hello everyone! Welcome back to another tutorial in Roblox Studio. Now today we're going to do something completely different, but we're still going to use the wonderful, beautiful roads plugin. But instead of making roads, we're going to do something that's a little bit similar to roads. We are going to be making runways and taxiways for an airport. Now I'm not sure if there have been any tutorials out there with this plugin that you can do that. But you have the ability to make that happen with this sort of plugin, because all it literally is just straight lines and just connecting the nodes to other places, you know, if that makes any sense. So basically, literally all that it is just tons of road segments next to each other with one dash line down the middle that's like thickened out. And it's just other road segments that are about the same size, maybe a little bit smaller to house the airplanes, and just a yellow line going down the middle because it's a taxiway. And that's literally all that it is. So I'm going to go down just a simple run through on how you can actually make a runway for, of any size. And it's surprisingly really simple. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you just the most basic runway first of all, but as we go on, I'm going to shrink it up because we're going to add some taxiways to the runway and along the outside. So, as always, every time we ever do this sort of tutorial, you got to make sure that you got to have your road editor plugged in. You got to make sure that you got your plugin, right? Alright, so now you're going to want to create your new node, just as is. Look at that. We got our beautiful node. Now, you can just leave this as is. But let's see, what would I do? So this just a simple test. We don't know how big we need to make the runway. You know, we just need to start starting to do random numbers. Just pick and choose, trial and error. That's all we gotta do. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add 4 nodes to each side. So there's a total of 10 nodes, right? And then we got this massive monster here, which I actually have never seen a 10-lane road like this before, unless it was on an interstate. So, gonna have to render it. Oh my gosh, that is actually a lot. Yeah, I left the settings like this, and I guess I forgot to change it. So let me just change that back real quick. 10 render. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, this is just a nightmare for all of us, isn't it? Just a nightmare for all of us. There we go. Oh my gosh. Oh, that is so much better. Alright. So now, after you get your wonderful roads set up, this is the fun part. You all know this. We got to delete the lines. We got to delete the lines. Now, you don't have to get rid of the outside lines because those are there for actual runways. Now this may be a little big for a runway, but this is a good start. Now, you're going to want to remember that for every time that you do a runway, you got to make sure that the exact middle, it has to be white dashed lines. It has to be that. Did it not go through? Hello? Oh, I guess it didn't. But the middle of the runway, it has to be white dashed lines. And on the outsides, it does have to be like this. Like solid lines on the outside and dashed lines in the middle. That is what it has to be. Now, what I do is that obviously you have to adjust the lines a little bit. Because when you just think of the lines, all the lines are like way too close. So obviously this may seem a little too big, but that's okay. But that's okay. It's just trial and error. That's all that we're doing. So what I do is that I just try and do just bigger segments as it goes along, and this looks a little bit better, but I think we can go just a little bit bigger. Actually, matter of fact, I'm gonna scoot this runway down a little bit. So now we got like all this monstrosity right here, and I think we can go out just a little bit more. I want 25. Okay, I guess the biggest is 20. That's completely fine. Let me just make sure I can go to 30. No, that's not. 20 is max. Okay, that's perfectly fine. So max is 20. That's good to know. And the line width, well, it needs to be a little bit thicker. It needs to be just a wee bit thicker. So let's do 2 studs. Okay, that's a little bit better. That's a little bit more realistic. Won't y'all agree? Won't y'all agree that may be a little more realistic? What about a 3? Okay, okay. Let's try a 2.5. Okay, we can stick with this for now. We can definitely stick with this for now. So all it is just trial and error, pick and choose. That's all that it is. You literally just have to just pick and choose on what you're just wanting to do. Now, we got this. Now, what I always like to do is that I always like to go into the toolbox and get an airplane, just to make sure that the size is ideal for said plane. So I'm gonna get this one. If we'll come out, there we go. Put that sucker in the middle, and I'd say that's pretty realistic. Like, the size of it is pretty realistic. Because if this runway was supposed to house like a 747 or an A380, then this runway would fit the qualifications because it's just big enough. Now, this may be a little too big, but I think for starting purposes, this is big enough. I think we may have to go 4 nodes out total on each side, so a total of 8 nodes. I think we may have to do with that. But 10 is a good start, which we'll stick with for this tutorial. But if I was actually making a map out of this, I would do 4 and 4. That way, it's a little bit more even, a little more together. It's not so big, you know. And like I said, trial and error. That's all that we're doing here. That's literally all that we're doing. So, okay, so now we have our runway, which is looking good. Now let's see. Now what if we want to do a taxiway? A taxiway is a very good question because, well, how would we implement that? Well, let me show you. So first of all, you're gonna want to get your node out and gonna want to do it out just a little bit. I'd say 3 on each side. You don't want to do the same size as the runway. You do not want to do that. It needs to be just a little bit smaller, mainly because the runway has room for error, but no one is going to land on a taxiway, or at least no one's smart enough is not going to land on a taxiway. They're always going to land on a runway. People that are dumb are going to land on taxiways. I've learned that from experience. YouTube experience, that is. So, as always, you're going to want to extend that out just a little bit. Just make sure you want to see, and remember we got the rendering options. So whenever you're doing this, you want to you always want to try and keep the runway and the taxiways completely separate. So make sure you do render change instead of rendered all, because if you do rendered all, then everything is going to be the same. You always want different numbers. You're only going to want to worry about render change, okay? Just only worry about that. So now, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to just get rid of all these lines, just that we just don't have to worry about all this and doing the resizing later. I mean, we have to resize it, but I don't want to resize it to get it small again and then make it large again. I don't want to do that. But for the middle, instead of doing like a double yellow line, we just need to try and make it just one. Well, apparently it's not wanting to do its thing. Oh, that's why. That is why. Okay. There we go. Invisible. Boom. Finally. There we go. Now that's not 100% perfect, but that's just a tutorial. We will just go with it. We'll just go with it, just so that y'all have an idea what to do. Now again, don't hit render all after you make these changes. Don't hit render all. But you want to make the taxi line a little bit smaller than... Uh-oh. Did it affect that too? Huh. Well, that's good to know. Well, anyways, I guess it does affect the lines. Yeah, it does. Dadgummit. Well, anyway, it's a good reference point. This is just a tutorial. No one's perfect. Especially I'm not, since we're just gonna move on. We're just gonna move on. But yeah, so as soon as you get this down, you want to make sure that you have your taxiway where you have the solid yellow line, because that yellow line is important and it's a way for the planes to actually go along the path. You know, just so that they can just follow and get from A to B and go on to Taxiway Charlie through Bravo 1, just so that they can make it all the way down to runway 27 right. That is basically what Taxiways does. It just guides the planes. And this is what your mission is as the builder for these. You're trying to create all possible routes. Obviously, don't go overboard, but you're trying to make all possible routes and multiple possible routes where you can get from the runway or multiple runways to the gates. That's pretty much it. And that's literally your objective. So you're just gonna want to. Oh my gosh, I have no idea what I'm doing. I just had a massive brain fart. So when you're rendering this, obviously you're gonna have to extend the nose and do all this sort of fancy work, which no one really does enjoy that, unfortunately. But what you're gonna want to do is that you're also gonna want to, just like a normal intersection, you're gonna have to create a new node, 90 degrees approximately. If you're doing just a, if you're doing just like a like just a standard road, or like just a standard intersection, then you don't need to go all out and just do something like this. And it's fairly simple because it's literally just matching. You just have to make sure that you get your rendered lines to basically be the same in all situations. Let's see, so I'm going to want to set this to invisible, then invisible, and then set this one to invisible. Huh. Horrible reference time. Horrible reference. But anyway, continue on. There we go. Now we're going to connect it all back up over here. And I'm going to do the same thing over here, which is something that I would not normally do. But you do have to cover the entire taxiway or the entire intersection with the node. So it's a little bit more work, but when you get it done, it looks a lot nicer. Ah, love that mess. Look at that beautiful, beautiful, beautiful mess. So again, as always, just going to want to clear it out and get rid of all the nasty bits. All like the mega nasty bits. Invisible. Set that to invisible. This one also to invisible. Boop. Okay, now we got to render that down. So now we're back with the pain in the neck. And why? Okay, so now it's wanting to do a solid yellow line. Alright, let's see what I've got here. Alright. So that's fine. That's fine. So I just need to find this line. Is that it? It looks like it is, but it's not. It's invisible, that's why. Okay. Okay, well, for the sake of time, we're just gonna move on. So basically, let's just imagine that all this mess right here is just a single line. That's basically how you do like a simple taxiway intersection. So like planes can go from the runway to the airport. And you would basically do the same thing over to the runway, except instead of having this line right here, you would either have like just one turn going this way or one turn going this way, depending on where you are on the runway. Or you would have both of these arches and the runway just running down the middle. Now, for any of you that are curious, the only reason why you wouldn't have both of these down at the end of the runway is because if you wanted to take off in this direction, then you're going to want this end to come over here if the airport's on this side and you're going from the runway from this direction. Same thing, vice versa. But it'll be flipped when the plane's coming from that side of the runway. Not all runways are in that situation, but for most cases it will be like that. So you don't, in rare situations, you will rarely see a taxiway where it's going back in the opposite direction at the very end of the runway. it's very rare for that to happen. But that's a basic rundown on how to do runways and taxiways for your airport in the city. Now just keep in mind, whatever as we learned to do this, whatever changes you make to these nodes will also affect your roadways in your area. So you have to keep that in mind. There is a good number in between that is good for both. There is a good number in between. You usually have got to do a lot of trial and error. It's literally just plugging in numbers and just seeing if it works, and it's by your judgment only. Obviously, you don't want too big or too small. There's always that sweet spot right in the middle. That's what you're looking for. Especially with this right here. That's all that you're working for. So, as I said, this was not perfect, but I hope that this tutorial is a good rundown on what y'all could do to basically create your own airport with the Beautiful Roads plugin. And your map just may even be just an airport, and then you'll be perfectly fine. But this is a good reference for y'all, in my opinion, to help you at least get started. Now, in the future, if time does allow, I will do more in-depth looks on how to do certain things. But this is literally more than 50% of the entire airport. The rest is literally just the building and the other fancy trinkets. But if y'all did enjoy, then please leave a like and subscribe down below. It's always free. You can always change your mind. If y'all did enjoy, then feel free to watch my other videos. You're not obligated to do so. And other than that, I am signing out, and I will see all of you in my next video. Bye!